Originals, découvrez en avant-première nos interviews sur les séries qui font l'actu.
Aujourd'hui, Originals accueille Rebecca Cutter, la productrice et scénariste de Hightown, dont la saison 2 arrive sur la plateforme Starzplay le 17 octobre prochain. Hello, Rebecca.
Hi.
My first question is, what was your elevator pitch when you tried to sell Hightown?
Well, I actually wrote it on my own, so I never really pitched it. I just wrote the script. But I guess the elevator pitch would be, a crime drama that takes place in Cape Cod, which is this, this sort of beautiful tourist destination in the States, against the backdrop of the opiate crisis. A little bit showing the dark side of a light.
So the idea of setting the story in Provincetown, which in season 1 you describe as full of fishermen and gays on vacation. So was it always intended? And, for a foreigner, how accurate is that description?
Yeah, so I've been going to Provincetown since I was a baby, so my whole life. And then I married a man from a different part of Cape Cod whose father is actually a fishery service agent, which is Jackie's job in the show. So I'm the description. I mean, we shoot in Provincetown. I think that's pretty accurate, although actually there's much fewer fishermen now than there used to be. And a lot more gays on vacation. But it's a beautiful mix. It's a very, very, very special place to me and to many people. It's, thousands and thousands of people come every summer. So yeah. And then the show, especially season 2, takes place as well in the off season. So you get to see a big part of the show is sort of about the dichotomy between the sort of tourist sparkly side and the sort of darker winter side.
Which selling points were the most difficult to impose? How do you balance as a creator of a show the will to have your show made, of course, but also the need to compromise sometimes?
I have to say I've been very lucky. Starz has never asked me to compromise. They love Jackie being as messy as she is. They love that she's a queer woman. They love that we explore sex and drugs. They don't mind that it goes dark. So I've been really, and like I said, I wrote it on my own. This was just sort of came out of my head, and they've never asked me to do anything really different. They've been incredibly supportive. So I can't complain at all about, I don't think I've had to, really water it down or do anything that I can only take the blame for anything that doesn't work because they didn't make me change anything. So
talking about Starz, you said watering down, but on the contrary, did they ask you to tune it up, more violence, more sex, and more overall provocative scenes in general?
I would never say they asked for more violence or more sex. They did tell me, they really loved the love triangle between Renee, Frankie, and Ray. So I knew that was an aspect that was compelling to them and that, worked for their audience. So I was always mindful of that, but I think it was always going to be a big part of the plot. And then for the sex, they're a network. I think a lot of television is sort of prudish and Starz is not. They love a good sex scene. So, but to me, it's very important to me that the sex scenes always come out of character, stem from character, and there's always power dynamics that tie into the plot happening in this. It's never just a sex scene to have a sex scene. It's always something is happening that ties into what the characters want in the rest of that day. So yes, they love sex and I love to write sex scenes, but it always has to be rooted in something more.
How was shooting under COVID regulation, except for the obvious, the masks and such, obviously? What were the difficult things to cope with?
They didn't make me, we didn't like, there was talk at the beginning, like, oh, are we going to do this with no sex scenes to avoid kissing and everything? And we decided quickly, like, no, like that's such a part of the show.
Yes.
We're not going to try to make it, you can't make the show without people talking intimately so we decided we were just going to go ahead and, do all the testing and do everything we can to keep it safe. But, we have to make the show that we made, we have to continue making the show that we started making in season 1 and not change it. So, there was nothing. I mean, yes, the masks, all that stuff is tiring. There would be uncertainty, a lot of uncertainty. Like sometimes people's tests wouldn't clear and, you'd be waiting on set. Like, are they going to get here in time? And there was a scene that was supposed to be 2 people in person. But one of the actors, she wasn't positive, but the test just didn't come through in time. So we had to end up shooting them as a phone call and have them be separate. So, because we couldn't shoot her till much later. So, things happened and you have to roll with it. But for the most part, we were very lucky. It worked out and nobody got really sick. So
good. You're the head writer of the show. How collaborative is the writing process?
So we do a writer's room, about 5 or 6 months. And that's before we're shooting. So everybody, we break the stories all together, and then, everybody is assigned a script and they write it. And then I just, I give them notes and then I'll do my pass on it. So it's very collaborative. I just try and give it my voice, but, we're all pitching storylines, ideas, ways of making the episodes work. So yeah, I would never want to do it by myself.
Yeah, that's a heavy load. What were the lessons you've learned from season 1 that you applied to improve season 2?
Well, season 1 I wrote before it was cast. So I was writing imaginary characters. Season 2, I got to write for Monica Raymond and James Badge Dale and Riley. I had their voices in my head. So that was so amazing. I knew what they could do. I knew what chemistry they had. So that just made it so much easier. I understood the characters better. It was, there was things to draw on, sort of their history that we had shot season 1. You could draw on those moments and call back to those moments. So that made it really easy. And I think I learned a lot just as a new first-time showrunner of like, what can you shoot in a scene? What can you accomplish? Like sometimes you'll write a detail in a script and it's like, well, we're never going to see that unless that's the whole point of the scene and we're going to shoot an insert of the woman's ring, then you're not going to catch it. So yeah, it's like learning more and more about what's important in a scene. What does the director need to read and know? That's the most important thing.
The famous show Don't Tell.
Exactly.
The show got actually some heat when it aired because it started after the cancellation of Vida on Stars, which had the first queer and Latinx main character. So you said Monica Raymond wasn't casted at the beginning of the process. So was it incidental because you casted Monica Raymond, or did you have like the intent to have a Latinx lesbian main character on Hightown?
No, it was always written that way. I wrote it, as I said, I wrote it on my own in 2016. Her name was always Jackie Quiñones. Not for like any political reason, like literally I was just driving one day and like that was the image that came to me. So that's what I wrote. And then we're so blessed that Monica came along and is queer herself and wanted to portray that and really wanted the role and was really hungry for it and just brought so much to it. But yeah, that was always intentional.
Without spoiling, of course, but in this season, Jackie is heading towards a steady relationship, let's say that. And I personally hope it won't be an addition to the bury your gays trope, at the end of the season. So can you just reassure me on this aspect or not?
What was the trope? I'm sorry, say it again.
The bury your gays, how lesbians always end up gay, dead, sorry. Oh, I can see my face though.
No. I'm comfortable with that. Yeah, no one dies.
Thank you very much. So in season 2, there's
guys, but those two.
No. Okay, great. In season 2, there's an assembly where the sergeant addresses high school students. We know it's becoming more and more current that younger and younger people become victims and distributors of drugs. So when did you realize you wanted to integrate this arc in the discussion of the show?
The youthfulness of it?
Yes.
Well, I think that's always been something that's on the back of my mind, that it is a very young sort of issue. I think there was a lot of kind of, to me, when I was thinking about season 2, the idea of like whose murders get, what death gets a lot of attention and what death doesn't. And so, I don't want to spoil anything, but like the people who die early on, the assembly, those kids, that gets a lot of attention. And because they're, these white kids or whatever, upper middle class. So the idea that would kind of get people's attention in the show, whereas, last season it was sort of, junkies and
yes.
People that were more easily discarded, I guess, by society. So that was sort of, I guess, a political intent on my part. But also just that you would be very sad to see very young people as well. I'm not above, pulling the audience's heartstrings.
Yes. How hard is it not to be just black and white when you're discussing topics such as, drugs and the use of drugs?
Well, I come from a place of understanding addiction personally and knowing a lot of addicts and knowing a lot of people in recovery. So I don't come at it. I don't have just say no in my, it's like, if it works for you, do it. But certainly there are people who it's destructive for. And I think a lot of it is about trauma and, filling a void, and self-medicating. So I think everybody on the show is sort of self-medicating in some way or filling some void in some way. Drugs is one way, sex is one way, so I don't think it's black and white. I think I try and tell the actors all the time, it's not either or, everything is and. So you can be Jackie can be being very selfish, and she's on this crazy thing and she's going on this on this venture, season 1, that's really trying to fill a void in her, and she wants to help someone and she wants to solve a crime, so Ray is using Renee, he's taking advantage of her, and he loves her, so that things can be both at the same time, and not to judge anyone, let the characters be multifaceted.
And to conclude, what was the last show you've binged?
Oh, it's the last show I binged. Oh my gosh. Oh my God, you just scared it out of my head. What was it?
Or the last show you really, really enjoyed?
Okay, I mostly watch murder documentaries. I don't watch a lot of. God, what's the last thing on HBO Sunday night? That's what I watch. Oh, I just rewatched Succession, both seasons. I love that show. It's the best show. Second best.
True that. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
C'était Rebecca Cutter au micro de BetaSeries. Et pour rappel, la saison 2 de Hightown est à retrouver sur Starzplay le 17 octobre prochain. Et moi, je vous dis à bientôt pour un épisode d'Originals. That's over. Thank you very much. I'm good. Thank you.
Originals, découvrez en avant-première nos interviews sur les séries qui font l'actu.